through the murky waters of conscience. That certainly had people animated. Huh? Everybody had a question to ask. Wonderful. We're going to our fifth level now, which is authentic integral human development. Pull back out the your color thing. Look again at how we're moving. So this one comes from Pope Paul VI. Pope Paul VI, in a very important document in the church called Populum Progressio, the progress of people, Pope Paul VI said that authentic integral human development is the vocation of the church. Can you hear that? Authentic integral human development is the vocation of the church. That means that is how the church that is how God calls the church, or what God calls the church to. Can you hear that? This was a huge paradigm shift. Huge. Because people saw development as something that governments do, not something that the church does. And our view on development is very different from the view of governments. And we have our own unique set of thinking around development. But if it is the vocation of the church, then we as church have to understand it, but we as church also have to live it. Amen? Okay. So, authentic integral human development is the development of each person, of every person, of every dimension of the human person. Think about that for a moment. So, let's take this table here, only because they have such nice bright colors. Let's take this table here. If we're talking about authentic integral human development, it's the development of each person here. That means each one, each individual. The development of all, so all of them together. So we can't do the development of one unless we're doing the development of all. So we have no competition between the one and the many. We have to do the one, we have to do the many. But it's not an external development only, because it's also each dimension of the human person. That means all the different parts of us. That means our emotional development, our intellectual development, our spiritual development, our physical development. So when we're talking authentic integral human development, we're talking about the development of the whole person, of every dimension of that person. Yeah? And that means that if resources are scarce, we give more resource to the people who need more developmental help. Can you see that too? Okay. Now this is another paradigm shift, okay? This is another one. I'm warning you all. Because this is what connects Catholicism to the transformation of the world. Because if we talk about authentic integral human development as a vocation of the church, then the church in Trinidad and Tobago is responsible or has a hand in the development of all citizens, of each citizen, of every dimension of that citizen. That's why the Catholic Church is in education. That's why we're in education. I say over and over again, Catholic education or the Catholic school is not in the education business. Can you hear that? The Catholic school is not in the education business. The Catholic school is in the formation business. The formation of the whole person. We are not there to put information into heads. We are there to form men and women who are great citizens of our nation and the world and great disciples of Jesus Christ. That's why we're there. A great Catholic school produces great citizens and great disciples. It produces both. Can you see that? Because ultimately the school is in the development business. Development of all of their kids, of each of them, and every dimension of that child. That's the business, including the spiritual development. Including the spiritual development. And can I say to you also that the parish is also in the development business? Huh? Can you hear that? The parish is in the development business. Because it is about developing each parishioner, every parishioner, and every dimension of the parishioner. Can you hear that too? Can you hear that the confirmation class is supposed to be in the development business too? And that we are supposed to, when that child leaves us, that child should have grown in their intellectual development or their IQ, in their emotional development or their EQ, in their spiritual development or their SQ, and in their physical development or their PQ. They should have grown in all four quadrants of development. Can you hear that too? One of the things that happened each year, you know, every child sends a letter to the bishop asking for confirmation. You all do that here? You all don't do that here? Man, in Barbados, every child writes asking for confirmation and saying why they would like confirmation. Every child. And I read every letter. And each year, in my first few years, each year, when I read the letters, I would separate the letters into three piles. One, where there's an existential question being asked by that letter, that I don't know why, but I just feel so. One, where the child has had a great experience and it's been good. And one where the child might not have had a good experience or had one or two things that he might complain about. And each time I would go to the confirmation, I would make sure and meet first the children in this pile. And that's the existential question. Something in the letter that is saying something I'm not understanding. And the catechist after say, but how did you pick those children? Because if I had to make the list for you, I couldn't make it better. How did you get those children? So I don't know. It's something in the letter. And each time one of those children had developmental challenges. Sometimes it was mom and dad going through a divorce. Dad is an addict. The child is dyslexic. Something is happening in the family. And I don't know, but each time I would pick up on it. And many times after that, I would see the kids once or twice just to help them pass whatever the challenge is. So now I've asked them to write letters at the beginning of the program now. Because I don't want to wait till the end of the 2 years to figure it out. I want to get it in the beginning and pick out my kids and start helping them through the 2 years we have with them. Because if at the end of 2 years, a child hasn't grown intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, what are we doing? What are we doing? All we dare to do is to either feed their soul or feed their mind. Is that what we're doing? No. We have to develop the whole child. The whole child. Sometimes I would, before I used to do a test for them. I don't do it anymore. And you all used to do the tests from here. You all used to give me the tests from Port of Spain, and I would administer it up there. But it was very useful because the first time I did that, and I did the test, everyone who got under 50%, I pulled them into a session after confirmation. And I met them a couple times. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to understand whether the problem was poor teaching or whether the problem was a learning problem. And most of the kids, the challenge was a learning problem. Most of them. And I would meet them a couple times, talk to them about being dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. I'm terribly dyslexic. I heard all through my school how I was a nice guy but illiterate. But that's okay. I do what I do because I'm dyslexic. You see, I'm not tied to all these boxes all you have. The people tell me about thinking outside the box, and I ask them what box all you're talking about because I ain't seen none. So I talk about the gift of dyslexia. But because of that, I see kids who have challenges, and I can help them because I understand what it is like to sit in a classroom and have a teacher talking down to you as if you're an idiot. But in fact, you have a learning challenge that nobody has helped you to get past it. That's all it is. And most times dyslexics are very intelligent people. They're just not given the opportunity of a proper education because we're not dealing with the whole child. And what is the use of having a child with a learning difficulty in your class, spending 2 years with you, and leaving the class no better than when they came in? What's the use of that? Help me now. Help me. I understand that. If we can't help them with whatever is happening in their life during the 2 years we have them, we have failed those children. We have failed them. And our formation program, and that's what it is, it's a formation program, it's a faith formation program. Our formation program is not aimed at putting content in the head of children. It's aimed at growing those children into complete human beings. Can you hear this? So how are you going to get the tools to do this? You know, we saw yesterday that Google gets asked 100 billion questions a day. You all saw that? Yeah? Or a month. It was a month. 100 billion questions a month. You ask Google. Ask Google. And somebody has thought about the question before you, and somebody has written about it before you. So if you have a question, ask Google. And research it. And then find somebody to ask them. And then find out who are the experts in the field and get to ask them. Until you find how to help the children in your class. If authentic integral human development is a vocation of the church, catechesis has to be about human formation, and that means that we must become experts in human formation. I'm going to show you a video now. I just pulled this up by asking Google. I only asked Google. Google, give me an answer. Look at my answer.
Erikson's theory of psychosocial development identifies 8 stages which a healthy individual should pass through from birth to death. At each stage, we encounter different needs, ask new questions, and meet people who influence our behavior and learning. Stage 1. Basic trust versus mistrust. As infants, we ask ourselves if we can trust the world, and we wonder if it's safe. We learn that if we can trust someone now, we can also trust others in the future. If we experience fear, we develop doubt and mistrust. The key to our development is our mother. Stage 2. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. In our early childhood, we experience ourselves and discover our body. We ask, is it okay to be me? If we are allowed to discover ourselves, then we develop self-confidence. If we are not, we can develop shame and self-doubt. Both parents now play a major role. Stage 3. Initiative versus guilt. In preschool, we take initiative, try out new things, and learn basic principles like how round things roll. We ask, is it okay for me to do what I do? If we are encouraged, we can follow our interests. If we are held back or told that what we do is silly, we can develop guilt. We are now learning from the entire family. Stage 4. Industry versus inferiority. Now we discover our own interests and realize that we are different from others. We want to show that we can do things right. We ask if we can make it in this world. If we receive recognition from our teachers or peers, we become industrious, which is another word for hard-working. If we get too much negative feedback, we start to feel inferior and lose motivation. Our neighbors and schools now influence us the most. Stage 5. Identity versus role confusion. During adolescence, we learn that we have different social roles. We are friends, students, children, and citizens. Many experience an identity crisis. If our parents now allow us to go out and explore, we can find identity. If they push us to conform to their views, we can face role confusion and feel lost. Key to our learning are our peers and role models. Stage 6. Intimacy versus isolation. As young adults, we slowly understand who we are, and we start to let go of the relationships we had built earlier in order to fit in. We ask ourselves if we can love. If we can make a long-term commitment, we are confident and happy. If we cannot form intimate relationships, we might end up feeling isolated and lonely. Our friends and partners are now central to our development. Stage 7. Generativity versus stagnation. When we reach our 40s, we become comfortable, use our leisure time creatively, and maybe begin contributing to society. Our concern is generativity. If we think that we are able to lead the next generation into this world, we are happy. If we did not resolve some conflicts earlier, we can become pessimistic and experience stagnation. People at home and at work are now who influences the most. Stage 8. Ego integrity versus despair. As we grow older, we tend to slow down and begin to look back over our lives. We ask, how have I done? If we think we did well, we develop feelings of contentment and integrity. If not, we can experience despair and become grumpy and bitter. Time to compare us with mankind. Erik Erikson was a German-American psychologist who, together with his wife Joan, became known for his work on psychosocial development. He was influenced by Sigmund and Anna Freud and became famous for coining the phrase identity crisis. Although Erikson lacked even a bachelor's degree, he served as a professor at Harvard and Yale.
How was that? Huh? How was that? Okay. So at the tables, I want you to discuss two questions. Which stage of development are you in right now? Ah, boy. Yes, we're getting real, you know. Which of the 8 stages of development are you in right now? That's one. And the second question is, if you understand this, what do the children that you teach, what do they need? Remember that question from yesterday? Who do I serve and what do they need from me? Yeah, remember that? So what do the children that I teach, what do they really need from me? If we understand their stage of development. Go ahead.
Our boys and young men, because we find the church and the school environment as well are very feminized spaces. And even when we get men to come in, there's usually such a large age gap or generational gap. The young boys and young men are often invited to, for example, say the rosary on the 3rd Friday of the month, but that's the only sort of mentorship we try to do with them. So we are losing a lot of boys and young men in our catechetical programs, in our youth ministries, because there are no men to help, target that masculine energy in those male superhero role models, but in that Catholic setting. So where are young men? I am seeing some young men. This is awesome. and young men I've seen in different settings. I've seen you at Suvi, like with the football, with the chaplaincy. Yes. So I know we have them out there, but what can we do better?
Now, that's a developmental question. And it's a significant developmental question. Do you all know that there's a difference between girls and boys? You all know that? And I'm not talking biological difference. There's also a neurological difference. The brain of the boy works very differently from the brain of the girl. The brain of the girl learns best when she gets into a little group where she can huddle and talk. And she can do so for extended time because her brain lights up in very specific parts, but for a very long period of time. The boy's brain lights up with great intensity for a very focused and a shorter period of time. He can deal with a dyad, with one-on-one conversation. He's not best in a large group, and he's certainly not best in a focus for a long period of time. What that means is, from the time the little guy is knee-high, if he's in a classroom where he's only been taught by women, he's taught that he is fidgeting, he is restless, he is mischievous, he is naughty, he gets to the naughty corner. Guys, any of this is ringing true for you? Any, good, right. And from knee-high, the guy is made to feel ashamed of who he is because this is how his brain is wired. Are you all hearing me? This is just how the guy's brain is wired. He doesn't have a choice about this. So now that he is 7 or 8 years old and he has learned unconsciously that he is disruptive, he is this, he's that, he is disvalued from 7 or 8 in education, whereas the girl has all the brain qualities that is highly praised in a classroom that is set up and taught by women. Are you with me now? Are you hearing me? So when the little girl is nice and quiet, working nicely in groups of three to 5, is carrying through tasks from beginning to end, and she is being praised, by 7 and 8 years old, a child is already discriminated against because of his gender. Because his brain is working different from her brain, and the classroom is set up for her brain, not for his brain. He's not more intelligent or less intelligent than her. He just has different developmental, psychological, pedagogical needs than she does. Everybody hearing me? Yeah? Okay. Fast forward now to 11 plus, and then we start asking, why is it that boys are not doing as well as girls at 11 plus? Fast forward to university, and then we start asking, why is it that the boys are not getting into university at the same rate as the girls? It started at 5, 6, and 7 years old. Everybody's okay with this? Okay, I have a hand up over here.
I was reflecting that it comes at an earlier stage. And I think a lot of times the children that we get in Sunday school have been rejected from the moment of conception. And some of them have survived attempts to get rid of them. So when we're looking at what do the children need, there's so many gaps in their development that when they come to us at 7, then we have to fill in all those things that were not supposed to happen. And, it's perpetuated by the differences, especially with the boys and so on. So I think if we approach our children that we have to work with, even as a regular teacher as well as a catechist, that we have to fill in the gaps because the love that needed to have been in them from the moment of the knowledge of their conception is not there. And that's what we have to fill before we can pour God into them.
I agree. I want to give you a second level of this developmental challenge. Girls are hardwired for socialization. It's integrated right into the psychological makeup of the girl. Boys receive socialization as a software program that is loaded onto his brain externally. And how he gets the program loaded is by another male who does socialization, teaching him how to socialize. If that other male, dad, has not been taught how to socialize, guess what happens to the guy? He doesn't pick it up. If dad is not there, guess what happens to the guy? He doesn't get it. When the guy goes to school from 5 years old right up to the end and has only ever had women teachers, the guy has no opportunity for socializing and for learning how to socialize as an adolescent. And then we're blaming the guys because of all the problems that these boys have. No, we have a society that has challenges, developmental challenges, that we are not facing and addressing consciously. And I was in England when studying, when BBC announced this genetic difference between the male and the female that has to do with a gene of socializing that the woman has that the male does not have. A woman in the same environment will learn socializing easier and better than her brother will in the same environment. Just because that's hardwired in, and for him, he has to get it from somebody else, another male. And it has to pass by osmosis. That's why ancient civilizations used to take the boys away from the mothers at adolescence, put them in the camp with the men, and have the men socialize them, and then they became adults after that. But it was a process of initiation into manhood. We no longer initiate boys into manhood. Girls, it happens nearly easier. And it's not easy for the girls either, but nearly it is easier for the girls than it is for the boys, because mom has a much better facility for communication and socializing than dad usually has. Am I being heard here? Okay. Now, come to your programs in the school, in confirmation. One of our confirmation programs had some sports around it. What about if the confirmation program had things that are really some guy things? And we got the boys to do some interactions with men that they wouldn't necessarily have anywhere else. You see, before, the scout leader was usually a man. Now the scout leader is a woman. Am I wrong? The cub leader was a man. Now the cub leader is a woman. The coach was a man. Now the coach is a woman. So no matter where the guy turns, there's no male mentor that is easily available to him in his development. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? Okay, good. You open a hornet's nest. If authentic, integral human development is the vocation of the church, then we as church have to find ways in our catechetical programs to meet the gaps of both our boys and our girls. We have to find the ways to meet those gaps. You know, I would love to have a psychological development or developmental tool for the 7-year-old and for the 14-year-old that is online that we could get our kids to do that will tell us where their gaps really are. I would love to have such a available so that every child doing First Communion, every child doing confirmation could do the tool. We could see where the gaps are. We could call mom and dad in and say, look, here's the gaps with your, and here's how we could work together to close these gaps in the time that we have them. Wouldn't that be amazing? Eh? So if anybody here is a master's in psychology and does that kind of work, let me know. But we have to I am convinced in the church, we have to get to that place where we could nearly do a development index of our people and help them to grow to the next stage of their development. Any other questions? Okay, over on that side, one in between. Oh gosh, the men get courage, boy. The men get some courage now. You know, before no man was raising their hand, eh?
Bishop, you've raised a very, very critical and key issue. I often pose the question to my class if they can tell one key difference between a group of women liming together and a group of boys liming together. And the difference is this. So a group of women would be liming and one wants to go to the bathroom. They all go to the bathroom. However, a group of guys liming together and one wants to go to the bathroom. Okay, well, all right, you go check us back now. And the key issue is we teach our boys that to be a man, you need to keep your issues internalized. Don't share because it makes you less of a man. Whereas the women, they have an issue. The first thing they do is they call up a friend and they discuss it. And to make matters worse, the children are being bombarded with a lot of irregular practices on mainstream media, where every sitcom, every television series has a same-sex arrangement going. So what it means to be a man becomes very, very blurred. Especially, as you mentioned, when they go to a preschool, the teacher is a female. The secondary school, it's a female. Yesterday, I was watching a football game on television. The referee is a female. So I was roped into the vocation thing quite by accident because it was felt that I love to hear the sound of my voice, so I should come and talk to the children. Not to mention the fact that they wanted a male in that role. So I agreed. And I think my calling is basically to get through to our young males especially, to let them know if you have an issue, it's okay to call a partner and discuss it as boys, as men. And I tend to...
I'd like to say something else. Mom gives the child the fluid. Dad gives the child the container. Okay? The fluid is the stuff of life, but the container is what gives that stuff some boundaries, some shape. Without the sacred container, what we have is fluid. That's addiction. Okay? That just leads to addictions. Without the fluid, you'll have a dry and empty container. Children need both the fluid and the container. I'd like to say something else. The absence of the father in the household and in the teaching system affects both the boys and the girls, because the girls are growing up without the container. And whereas girls had a strong sense of boundaries before, should I continue my sentence or don't worry, don't continue? Leave it right there. Okay. The girls, because they're not being fathered, are lacking the container, and therefore they're lacking the sense of boundaries. Therefore, they are not developing well either. For both the boys and the girls, we need to recruit male teachers into our programs. It is a developmental need. Okay, I know this is a hot topic, and I'm not going any further on it. So I know our brother over there had a question, but I need to go on to the next point I want to make. Huh? It's not the same thing.
The question was, what stage are we at? Are you at? And I want to know if it suggests that I, at my age, could be at a stage, could be still at the 5-year-old stage.
Excellent question. The answer is yes. You ever see big men wearing long hair, earrings, and driving sports car? Huh? You ever see that? Okay, good. Then you know that age is only a number, is not a developmental index. So that if our needs are not being met at the appropriate stage, we take those needs forward into the next stages of our development. So if the earlier stages are not being met, we take them forward with us until they get met somehow or we die. Yes. And that means that we have a responsibility ourselves to grow up ourselves and to find a way to do the growth. I want to go to the next slide on this. This is a quotation from Pope Benedict. Pope Benedict is one of the greatest theologian popes that the church has had, without doubt. Highly misunderstood by the masses, but one of the best theologian popes. Some even think that the last time we had a theologian pope like Benedict was Gregory the Great. Some even think that. But Pope Benedict says, Paul VI taught that progress in its origin and essence is first and foremost a vocation. In the design of God, every person is called upon to develop and fulfill himself. For every life is a vocation. This is what gives legitimacy to the church's involvement in the whole question of development. Our commitment to development is a theological commitment that comes from who Christ is and what the church is called to be. Everybody gets this? Give me the next one. Next slide. Pope Benedict says, the first thing is that the whole church, in all of her being and acting, when she proclaims, when she celebrates, when she performs works of charity, is engaged in promoting integral human development. Can you hear that? The whole church, in all of her being and acting, in everything that she does, when she proclaims, when she celebrates, when she performs works of charity, is engaged in authentic integral human development. The proclamation is a teaching mandate of the church. The celebration is a liturgical or sanctification mandate of the church. The charity is a governance or kingly mandate of the church. So he's saying the whole church in her threefold mission, prophet, priest, and king, is involved in the work of integral development. You're hearing it differently now? You know, in baptism, when we were anointed with chrism, we were anointed prophet, priest, and king. So the whole church, in all dimensions of the mission of Christ in the church, is involved and engaged in authentic integral human development. This is not something that is an optional extra that we load into our program if we have some time. This is either the foundation of the program or we are not faithful to the Catholic Church. Can you hear this? if our programs are not fostering authentic, integral human development, our programs are not Catholic. This is for me, authentic, integral human development is a hallmark of Catholicity today. And I want to go through what Paul VI taught about it so you understand why I would think so. Next slide, please. Development for Paul VI is a pilgrimage that we are on and called to. We are all called by God to progress and to transcend ourselves. Next slide. I'm going to change them quickly, so keep up with me. Paul VI starts with the lack of material necessities for those who are without the minimum essentials of life. So where do we start? We start with the lack of human necessities: water, clothes, shelter, food, all the things that are essential for life. The second level is moral deficiencies of those who are mutilated by selfishness. The third level is oppressive social structures, whether due to the abuse of ownership or to the abuse of power, to the exploitation of workers, or to unjust transactions. So, lack of material, moral deficiencies, oppressive structures. He goes now, so it's a pilgrimage from less development, next slide, to more human development. We pass from that now, from misery, towards the possession of necessities, victory over social scourge, growth of knowledge and acquisition of culture, increased esteem for the dignity of others, the turning towards the spirit of poverty, cooperation for the common good, and the will and desire for peace. Are you seeing this? Next slide. And this is what he will call even more human development. The acknowledgement by man of supreme values and of God, their source and their finality. And ultimately, faith, a gift of God accepted by the goodwill of man, and the unity in the charity of Christ, who calls us all to share as sons and daughters in the life of the living God, the Father of all. Development is a continuum from meeting our basic human needs all the way to living in mystical union with God. It is not an either-or proposition. It is a both-and proposition. Authentic, integral human development at its ultimate end is being a saint. At its ultimate end, it is being a saint. The other piece of this is here now. Matthew Kelly, and a number of you must have heard of Matthew Kelly, Catholic evangelist. He talks about becoming the best version of yourself. That's the way that he has taken this complex term and put it into a memorable phase. Becoming the best version of yourself. And he ties it to incremental growth, continuous learning, all the time. So I want to run a marathon. What many people will do is wake up tomorrow, go and buy the best gear and shoes and everything you need, put it on, and go and try to run 26 miles and kill yourself. If I want to run a marathon, what I do is tomorrow morning, when I wake up, I go on a walk for 5 minutes. And the next day, 10. And then you go to 15. Then you go to 20. Eventually you reach an hour. Eventually you start running for 5 and walking for 55. And eventually you're running 30, walking 30. Eventually you're running for the hour. Then you go up to running for the hour and walking for 20 minutes. And you go up, you go up, you go up. Incremental steps until you reach the target where you want to go. Everybody's good with this? Development is a pilgrimage. It's a journey. We set out from wherever we are right now. So if in Erickson's stages of development, we have not yet arrived at the stages we ought to be, how fascinating. What you do is you figure out what your next growth steps are, and you do conscious activity towards your next growth steps. You take small steps towards where you need to get to. Remember, it is incremental growth done continually. If we do small steps and we do it continually, we will get to where we want to go. If you try to do the whole hog in the first day, you get defeated. How many people have tried a diet? Come on. How many people have tried a diet? Good. Excellent. And how many have been successful? Okay. Because you start off wanting to lose that 10 pounds in the first day. Rather than start off by saying, you know something? I'm going to cut down on my sugar tomorrow. And then I'm going to cut down on this a little bit. Then I'll cut down on that. And then I'll cut down on that. And over a period of time, getting yourself where you want to be at. So, this is the thinking of Paul VI. So when we see developmental needs in ourselves and in others, what we do is we identify the need, identify not where they ultimately need to go to, but we identify the next step on the journey for them to reach to. And we ask that person to make the next step. Just the next step. That's all I'm asking. Just that next step. And if they make that next step, they say, congratulations. That was so good. So proud of you. Look at how you have done this. Could you work with me now so we could get to the next step? We make the next step again. And if you keep doing small steps consistently, we'll get people to the development that God is calling them. Now, I want you to go on your worksheets, and we have 2 things to fill out on the worksheets. The first one on conscience. What are the areas in my conscience that God is asking me to address? I want you to go to the next set of questions on your paper, which are asking about development. And it's the areas where I need to grow and to grow others. And to review the 5 levels of vocation, what are some growth steps that you can take in each of these 5 areas of vocation? So if you look at your personal vocation, what's one step that you can take there? When it comes to your life choice or profession, what's a step that you can take there? If you're married, what's a step you can take to nurture your vocation to marriage? If you're single, what's the step that God is asking me there? If you're a priest or religious, what is he asking me there? If you're a teacher, whatever your profession is, what is he asking me there to make this more like vocation? So these are now writing developmental steps for yourself. And when you finish that one, go to the last question set on the sheet that asks you about your own discipleship. What are some developmental steps that you can take towards this seamless garment of discipleship? What are some things you need to do? It might be exploring a certain area. It might be a deeper commitment to a prayer life. It might be taking 1 or 2 or 3 of the forms of prayer into your life on a regular basis. What are the steps, the developmental steps that you can take or that you need to take to come to this seamless garment of discipleship?